What's going on, WBE fans? It is General Tario bringing you the final week of the regular season for Pick'ems in the WBE. Once again, I am joined by my wonderful friend CJ.
Hey, what's going on, WBE fans? It's your friend choice CJ here, back with another week of Pick'ems with Ben. Ben, I hope you had a nice Labor Day weekend.
I had a great weekend. I really did enjoy that day off from school. Shoutouts to that. Got to relax a little bit more than normal. Still had a lot of work in the end, but we're going to ignore that because I still had a good time. I hope you also had a great Labor Day weekend.
Yeah, it was good. I got to travel to see my family and ate a lot of food. It was really nice.
You had me at food. But now that we were getting into things, guys, unfortunately, games are still not done. It is a little bit of slacking, and it's like you're making up a lot of games from Pokemon Worlds and stuff, and that affected games from later on. So unfortunately, none of the games are done, but Dan did have a deadline for every coach for this coming Saturday for all games to be done. So playoffs can be set in stone because there's not going to be a week in between for playoffs. It's immediately going from week 13 to round 1 of playoffs. So you all have that to look forward to. So we're going to save the results once again for next week. That way we'll be able to show all the results from the entire regular season. So that's a lot just easier straight up. And the games will be done if they have to hand out forfeits for like at least teams that aren't playing for playoffs, then they will eventually. So we just have to keep that in mind, and hopefully all results will be set for next week, and we will provide the stats for all the analysts as well as the fan votes. But now that we don't have to worry about that, CJ, you can immediately go to game 1 if you would like.
Yeah, absolutely. To finish off our final week here, or to start things off in our final week here, I should say, we're going to go into the match between the Seattle Sea Kings, coached by Jodor, and his opponent is going to be the Melbourne Rotoms, coached by Aaron Cybertron Zhang. So this matchup really highlights just how scary Infernape is in general. You look at setup Infernape sets, whether it's Swords Dance or Nasty Plot, or even a workup set with like a mixed move set, could be really nice here. I say workup would be nice because then you can run close combat for something like Blissey, but then you have the ability to run Vacuum Wave to hit the Kartana super effectively. Having the ability to hit that on the special side would be quite nice. You basically just need to get rid of the Mega Slowbro in order for that sort of Infernape set to really go in. And so I think maybe you use a Haxorus to lure that thing in with either like a Dragon Dance or DD set. If you can throw off like a very powerful Dragonium Z versus that, it'd be a really nice way to whittle it down for the Infernape. I think that'd be really nice. Standard Belly Drum Slurpuff looks also pretty good. Just run Play Rough. You could potentially run Drain Punch as well, just to get like a ton of recovery off of Pokemon such as Mamoswine and Blissey and Guzzlord. But what I actually kind of like is you run Play Rough, and then you run Flamethrower for Kartana. A Jolly Slurpuff at +2 actually outspeeds the Scarf Kartana, so that is definitely something to take into account. And then in the last slot, I actually kind of like running Facade. Facade is just nice in case you want to set up on the Slowbro as the Slowbro goes for Scald. It burns you, but then you have a powerful move to hit basically the entirety of Aaron's team. Because the only resist to that is going to be that Kartana at that point. And again, you already have the Flamethrower to hit that Kartana. You don't really care if you're burned or not. So yeah, I think the Slurpuff could be potentially scary if he decides to bring a slightly different move set. But just, again, it's kind of the standard Citrus Berry plus Belly Drum combination there. To counter that Slurpuff, there's not a lot of options on Aaron's team. Maybe you run Scarf Final Gambit on a Selgor to be able to guaranteed revenge that. That might be the way to go. I don't know if Aaron will bring that, but it's just something that I see off the top of the sheet here. For Aaron, I think kind of his best win con is actually Miltank with Curse plus Return. And then also, of course, Milk Drink, and the last move slot being Heal Bell. I think Heal Bell is pretty nice because whereas like Aloe and Umbreon might like to kind of stall it out with like Wish, Protect, Toxics kind of stuff, Heal Bell helps mitigate that quite a bit. The item I would probably run is Chople Berry, so that way you don't take as much damage from Infernape. That's going to be the best way to take out that Miltank, of course. If it is running like close combat instead of Focus Blast, you are going to be boosting your defense with Curse, so that helps mitigate some of that damage as well. So I think just that those two in combination, the ability to get the defense boost plus the Chople Berry to reduce the fighting stab on the Infernape is going to be really nice. And then like a +1 or +2 return should do a ton of damage to the Infernape. Be able to take that out. Like otherwise, there's just not a lot of strong special attackers on Joe's side to be able to immediately threaten that Miltank. And the return is like pretty free. It's just Bisharp being a resist, and Bisharp is eventually going to lose 1v1 to a Mill Tank. Because I guess unless, does Bisharp get taunt? I'm pretty sure it does. It could potentially like taunt it and prevent it from healing up. That's like the only thing that could potentially stop it. But I don't know that Joe will run Bisharp with taunt. That said, I am going to be picking Joe in this game. I like that Infernape set and the Slurpuff potential. And I think that Joe probably just has a little bit more motivation at this point in the season than Aaron does. It's like kind of split 50-50 amongst the analysts and fans in terms of who's going on which side. I think it's 5 for Joe and 6 for Aaron. But Ben, my buddy over there, is going with Joe as well.
Yeah, I had to go with Jodor because I do think Infernape does have an amazing matchup, and I really do think Mega Venu is going to be really difficult just to kill in general. And most of the other bulk like Alamamol and Umbreon are pretty decent here as well. Mamoswine really doesn't have that great of a matchup in my opinion. Selgor I think will be interesting for Cybertron though, if he's definitely going to bring like a final Gamut set. So that might help him be able to cheese the Mega Venu as well as Revenge and Infernape, if it's not going to be just a like standard Scarf Infernape that can get the outspeed on a Selgor. So just have to be aware of that, but in general I think Jodor definitely has this matchup set. For the next match, we have the Pittsburgh Pirates, coached by Old Man Thup, going up against the New York Noibats and Mewtwo fan Nate. For this matchup, I see really strong, heavy offense for the Pirates and the Pokemon such as Mismagius, Roserade, and Mega Charizard X. I think they both have, or they all have amazing matchups for this one. And also with the great support of Rotom Wash being just a great pivot in general is going to be very beneficial because Rotom can freely, of course, Volt Switch on like Slowking. The electric immunity is Mega Steelix, but you can be able, of course, to hit that with a Hydro Pump if you land it and everything, but even then Steelix isn't going to be doing that much to you in the first place. So you get good pivot out of Rotom, which especially can switch into like Thundurus and stuff like that. And then you're able to bring in Mismagius, which brings like Dazzling Gleam for Hydreigon, can like freely like Nasty Plot versus a Sylveon attack because it can definitely take a Hyper Voice and just be a massive threat with like Shadow Ball spam in general, works really well versus Nate's team. And Roserade typically, of course, just as well. Once again, Mega Steelix is probably the best switch in, but at the same time, it's going to be taking way too much chip between all these Pokemon, so you have to be aware of that. And Mega Charizard X is just an amazing wall breaker in general, as we know. Slowking probably be the best defensive option, but I really don't see Nate bringing all Sylveon, Mega Steelix, and Slowking in this matchup unless he feels really forced to. So I feel like if you bring just 3 of those offensive Pokemon, one of those is going to have an amazing matchup and you can just support it fairly easily and just use the others to get a free chip off over time. But as for Nate, I see a Life Orb wall-breaking Lucario doing a great job with Close Combat, Ice Punch, Bullet Punch, and Meteor Mash. It'd be really great if you could like get set up with Lucario, but in the end it would need like a speed boost with agility and stuff like that, and then it's lacking on damage with an SD. So I feel like it'd really just be best if you're able just to weaken apart the entire team for maybe like Thundurus or Hydreigon in the back, which might be the most ideal. I don't really think Shell Smash Cloyster would work that well this week. Maybe it does actually now that I'm looking at it, if you're able to weaken Rotom. But apart from that, you really just want to use it to just break apart the team, since Lucario does great versus Tyranitar, pretty solid versus Klefki, of course, since the Fairy is neutral to Fighting Stab, and then Ice Punch blows back Gliscor, and once again, Rotom's going to be probably the fattest thing that you have to worry about in this matchup, but that's basically it. Also for the Pirates I would love to see an Assault Vest Tyranitar, because as we know, the New York Noibats have very heavy special attackers in like Swellow, Hydreigon, and Thundurus. Being able to come in on those and just absolutely eat a hit with your Assault Vest plus the Sandstorm boost on your Spadef, and being able to like pursue trap them or just get off a very strong Stone Edge is going to be very beneficial in the long run. So when it came down to it, I actually had to vote in favor of the Pittsburgh Pirates and Old Man Tup. For the rest of the analysts, it's fairly 50-50 between Nate and Tup, I'd have to say, while the fans at home decided to vote in favor of the Pittsburgh Pirates as well. Chris Selke actually using her lock-in for Mewtwo fan Nate and the New York Noibats. CJ, is there anything you'd like to add to this game?
Not too much. Charizard I think could be pretty nice because it applies so much offensive pressure. It's going to force switch-ins to things like Slowking, Cloyster, and Sylveon. So kind of just like a Toxic Reset on Charizard to be able to weaken those things down with time. And like a bulkier option there wouldn't be too bad for dealing with like Thundurus and Go-Go and stuff like that. Like the Rotom probably helps deal with like the Thundurus a little bit, but I just think that the typing there is really nice. Otherwise, yeah, I like your callouts for the Mismagius and things like that. I think that Tup probably will end up taking this one. I'm glad that Nate finally got his first win since week 6, last week versus Aaron, but I think I like Tup here a little bit better. The next game is going to be between the Miami Dolphins, coached by Kyle A., and the Chicago Cubs, coached by Galactic Elliott. I think that the biggest threat for Kyle in this game is going to be his Kingdra. I guess that's how it usually works in most games, but I really like Physical in this matchup. I think that that's going to be better because it helps get around Mantine, which obviously has a huge special defense stat. And if the Serena comes, it'll probably come like a little bit more Spadef than Fizdef, just anticipation of like a standard specs Kingdra. If you run DD, I think that that's pretty nice because it helps counteract the hail to some extent. Like if you use the hail to reset the rain, then there's obviously no more potential speed boost from that Kingdra. But if you go for the DD, then you get your speed boost that way. So I think that's quite nice. Probably run Dragonium Z for the option of running Z Outrage to nuke the Mantine or the Serena. Last slot will probably be Hidden Power of Fighting for Sand Slash or Iron Head for Ninetales. I definitely think that Sugarberry Nidoqueen is going to be an important bring for Kyle in this game. Without it, the Scolipede from the Cubchus definitely just goes in because the dual stabs are pretty much unresisted. I guess you have like bulky Pokemon like Diancie and Torkoal that might be able to take one if it gets to a +2. But if you have Scolipede and it runs Ground Z for that Tectonic Rage, I bet that could take out even like a Fizdef, Diancie, or Torkoal. So again, that Nidoqueen being there is kind of valuable. The other thing that I wonder if Elliott brings as a potential win con would be like a Trick Room Hoopa. Trick Room Hoopa would be kind of cool because Kyle's team does skew kind of offensively with all the weather, and just having the Trick Room on the Hoopa would be a really good way to mitigate that. You can't beat that with, your fast weather sweepers. The only thing that's a little bit scared of course, is Diancie if Kyle chooses to bring that, because Diancie is going to outspeed in Trick Room. Torkoal is also potentially annoying depending upon the sort of set that Hoopa chooses to run. If Torkoal goes for Lava Plume spam and Hoopa is a physical set, then that could potentially be problematic. But I think that you could pretty safely go with a special variant on the Hoopa. Psychic is very good versus everything on Kyle's team. Just like going for Psychic off of that, 170 or 180 base special attack could be really nice. And then the only thing that's going to resist the Psychic type stab from that Hoopa is, of course, the Cresselia, which does not want to take a Dark Pulse. The only reason that maybe you want to go physical instead of special is so you can run the Hyperspace Fury to hit like a Calm Mind Cresselia. Maybe you run both just in case, and hope that you don't get burned by Torkoal. So I kind of like that option. Torkoal is annoying, but like you have easy switch-ins to Mantine and Chandelure if it comes to that with the Torkoal dealing with the Hoopa. I think that so I guess I'm trying to say I think that's a pretty good win con. The checks to that are easily dealt with. So I am going to be going in favor of Elliott in this game. Elliott has had a pretty good season, looking to be in playoff position in the Shield division, whereas Kyle, even though he's had a couple of nice victories, like one that really sticks out in my mind is that workup Pidgeot back versus Jodor. Despite that, I think Elliott's going to come out on top, just based on the strength of his season. And this is unfortunately going to be the opinion of every analyst and fan. Unfortunate for Kyle A, of course, considering that he has never lost. The fact that he is favored to lose by every analyst and fan will probably be upsetting to him. But yeah, you and I are both going in favor of Elliott in this game.
Yeah, it really just came down to records for this matchup. I had to go with Elliott. It was hard to go up against him. Kyle, of course, has been doing pretty well. He did get that 6-0 versus Jodor, but at the double weather just hasn't really worked out, and I really just feel like the Cubchies overall have the advantage here. I do like that Trigger Room Hoopa Unbound, like you mentioned. I would also like to see Scolipede go off because it is one of my favorite sweepers to watch, and I feel like it is a pretty decent matchup here, and it might actually be able to do work. For the next match, we have the Florida Gators, coached by Eights Gator, go up against the Bullet Punch Club and Uzi Gunner. This is going to be one of the many good games that we have for this final week of the regular season. Of course, Gator being undefeated since his first loss in week 1, while Uzi been absolutely on a tear since he took over this team in the middle of the season. Fighting for playoffs would actually be crazy, especially when he took over a team that was 0-6. So that'd be amazing on Uzi's part if he's able to get this dub versus Gator and make it into playoffs. But that's a big wall to jump over. And when it comes down to it, for this matchup, it's going to be a battle of the fighting types. I really see both Mega Heracross and Mean Shao doing a tremendous amount of work. Mega Hera, on the other hand, really is easily to be revenged, especially from Pokemon such as the Mega Aerodactyl sitting right there, potentially the Arcanine and everything of the sort. Mean Shao is more free to click moves majority of the time. It has to be aware of Frostlass's Ghost typing with, of course, fighting immunity if you want to like be high jump kick spam. But you do have U-turn, of course, to absolutely blow back to Celebi, which is very nice. And overall, Mean Shao does great with knockoff coverage and everything of the sort. Donphan is going to play an important defensive role in this matchup, purely for the Mega Aerodactyl, and has to make sure not to take too much chip from anything else that the Bullet Punch Club has on their team, because Mega Aero, of course, has that coverage in Aqua Tail, which will be able to deal with the Donphan pretty early on, especially if you run Adamant Mega Aero, even though we're most likely going to be seeing a Jolly this week to make sure you get an outspeed on the Zorora, but still have to be aware of the amount of damage and the coverage they can have versus the Donphan. Frostlass, I actually think, does have a great matchup right here. It will be pretty annoying to deal with, in all honesty, especially if you're able to get up Stealth Rocks versus the Bullet Punch Club. That way you limit the Mega Arrow and Arcanine Revenge. Also, you can run Ice Shard in case Mega Arrow gets low enough, so Frostlass does have the way to out-prioritize the Mega Aerodactyl and deal with it accordingly. So for that few reasons, when it came down to it this week, I had to go with the Florida Gators and its Gator. When I'm looking at the analysts, it comes down to about 4 or 5 analysts voting in favor of the Bullet Punch Club and the remainder voting for Gator. And while the fans at home decided to vote for the Florida Gators, Uzi Gunner actually using his lock-in for himself in the Bullet Punch Club, which is very bold. CJ, you're actually also going in favor of Uzi and the Bullet Punch Club this week as well.
Yeah, truth be told, like, the only reason that I'm picking Uzi is because I noticed that he locked himself in this matchup. And so if he has that much confidence in this game, then so do I. The matchup, I think, will be pretty tough just because Gator's been really formidable. But I think at this point in the season, Gator knows that his playoff spot is very secure, whereas Uzi is very motivated to get that clinch. So I think that could also play a role into how this game unfolds. So I got my fingers crossed for my boy, the Uzi Gunner, in this game. In the next one, we have the Sin City Scissors, coached by Patty Trills, going up against the Adelaide Honch Crows, coached by Bill Standish. If Patty's feeling really spicy in this game, I would definitely be bringing Swift Swim Seismitoad here, just because the water plus ground stabs looks really nice if you pack the coverage option of Sludge Wave there to hit the Whimsicott and the Primarina, both of which don't really mind the stab moves that Seismitoad can pack. The only thing that it needs to dodge is the Encore from the Whimsicott, and it can really do work. Rock Polish Lando T also works in much of the same way. If you go with that, if you go with like a Fly Z or something, it kind of helps versus the Whimsicott, because even though the Whimsicott can click Encore, it won't stop the Z Fly from coming out. So he can potentially take out that Whimsicott and then finish the sweep later on. So I think that's pretty nice. On Bill's side, I see one really major win con, and that's going to be a Rock Polish Necrozma. I think the one criteria that you need to set that up for a successful sweep is going to be trapping the Mega Zam with the Mega Scizor. So if you bring that thing in, switch it in on a Psychic type move, you're going to threaten it out with a potential Bullet Punch or U-turn. But as the Zam switches out, you can just go for Pursuit and take that thing out in one hit, easy peasy. Then Necrozma with Photon Geyser plus Earth Power to hit the Incineroar plus Heat Wave for the Ferrothorn is just really going to do a ton of damage. The other thing I really like on Bill's side is like a bulky Primarina, probably Fizz-Def. Just because like when you put that much investment into it, Primarina is sort of hard to kill in one shot. And because Primarina has such good space special attack, even without investment, it can kind of one-shot some things on Patty's team. Like Scald's easily going to be able to take out like Lando and Incineroar one hit. Primeape, Druddigon, things like that are going to die to a Moonblast in one hit. Hidden Power Fire is going to do a chunk of damage to Ferrothorn. Probably not one-shot it, but you know, maybe if you get it to come in on Scald once or twice, you get it in range of that Hidden Power Fire. The only thing that would be kind of annoying for that Primarina is Golbat, because it can Roost Stall. But yeah, like it's not that it's going to be a wall per se, but it's like a nice bulky pivot here where it can take one from almost anything on the team and then kill it in return. So I kind of like that option. maybe you want to be cheeky and run it with rest and then put like Heal Bell onto something else on the team. But we'll see if that ends up happening. In terms of the picks, I am going in favor of Patty Trills here, just based mainly on the strength of his team and the fact that Bill is still learning the team from taking it over from Luke. I think just on average this season, Patty's had a bit better success. And it looks like mostly that's how the analysts and fans are looking to. We've got two analysts, Dr. Slacking and Chris Elkey, going in favor of Bill. Hopefully he can pull it off, but I think the odds are pointing towards Patty Trills. And it looks like you're thinking the same thing over there, Ben.
Yeah, I had to go for Patty just purely based off of record. Also, like you mentioned, Bill hasn't had the team for long, of course, since Patty's been here since week 1. But one thing you didn't mention, I'd like to see like a sub, of course, on the Mega Exam, which is what you normally recommend. So I'm surprised you didn't bring it up. But and then running like Psychic, Dazzling Gleam, and Hidden Power Fire, I think that is an amazing matchup this week. In all honesty, especially if you do run the offensive Necrozma like you mentioned, you'd be able to whittle that down a little bit more, and that makes Zam pretty annoying in general. Of course, if you were to sub and then Whimsicott comes in on the sub predicting it, then you have to be aware of the Encore and everything like that. But apart from that, I feel like it'd be something pretty good that you just didn't mention. Overall, though, I do agree with everything that you did say. I would love to see Necrozma put in work this week as well. And for the next match, we have the San Diego Chimchargers, coached by Lord Envy, going against the Atlanta Umbreons and Feint Attacks. For this game, once again, like last week, I see a specially offensive Mega Sceptile looking amazing right now. Of course, with its stabs and like Leaf Storm and Dragon Pulse, and then run HP Fire, you're just looking very, very solid. And just to partner very well with that, you can easily bring your Doug Trio and trap the Entei, which is easily probably the best switch in a Sceptile and one of the main revenge killers. So being able to immediately just check that with Dougie, which always just does a great job in general, would be pretty beneficial. Doug Trio could also be able to trap stuff such as the Mega Gardevoir, which is pretty frail on the defensive side, the Lantern, Regirock, etc. You could definitely abuse Doug Trio this match, I feel like, apart from just the Entei. Scarf Moxie Heracross is looking very solid this game, especially if you're just able to chip off everything and leave it in the back for complete late game, and if you have Rocks ups, it's just looking really solid. Close Combat Spam is also just honestly pretty free in the end game. Once again, a Mega Gardevoir, 4 times resist though, but it has that low defense stat, so if you're able to get a +1 and it's already taking plenty of damage, then you'd probably be able to KO it either way. Mega Horn is also pretty good for spamming late game, but of course you have the risk of missing it compared to Close Combat, so if you are able to set up the Scarf Harris sweep, I feel like that'd be the best option. As for the Atlanta Umbreon side, I do see a Dragon Dance C Iron Tail Flygon actually looking pretty solid. Of course, with its stabs and Earthquake and Dragon Claw in the back to deal with everything else. Of course, the Z Iron Tail was strictly for the Togekiss. You don't really need any other form of coverage for the rest of the team. The Z is just to bop it because the defensive Togekiss can take majority of hits from Flygon. I'm assuming a Z Iron Tail would be able to knock out after +1, of course. And Flygon overall would just be able to continuously just win, of course, with its ground coverage hit like Victini, Drapion, and Registeel, and then the dragon coverage hit like Mega Sceptile, mainly in general. But you have to be aware of that Ditto. Once again, Envy always has that Ditto in the back. If he does acknowledge Flygon as a scary sweeper, or Dragonite in general as well, I wouldn't really be too surprised if we see the Ditto purely because of that double Dragon Dance potential. And lastly, I do see Honeclaw's Durant. I always say I want to see Durant do work, so hopefully it works this week. Fight Z might be a little beneficial or something of the sort, but if you are running the Z Iron Tail on either Flygon or Dragonite, that is fairly understandable. So you do, I still want to see Durant like have Honeclaws and just put in a decent amount of work. So we'll just have to see that going into this match. But when it came down to the pick'ems, everyone voted in favor of Lord Envy and the San Diego Chimchargers, and we actually have 2 analysts and Chris Cobain and JB Westside locking in, while you guys at home also voted in favor of Envy this week. CJ, do you have anything to add on?
The only thing I want to say is that it's funny you talked about Megahorn missing. There's at least in my mind, an iconic match between Christian back in UCL Season 2 versus A-Drive. Christian had Meloetta on his team back in that season, and Dan had Heracross, and he had a Scarf Heracross trying to hit a Megahorn versus Meloetta, and he missed it, and then that Meloetta ended up 6-0ing Dan in that game. So I'm hoping that Envy, or at least I'm sure that Envy is hoping that he doesn't have some of that same luck in this matchup if he's relying on Heracross to land those Megahorns. It's just funny because Christian once again has Meloetta on his team, so who knows what ends up happening there. It has nothing to do with the battle and the matchup that you just described, but it's just sort of a funny story that I remembered when you said that the Heracross was going to want to hit its attacks. So that's all. I'm going in favor of MV. He's 11-1, and Christian is out of playoffs. So that's about all that needs to be said in terms of the analysis there. Sorry, Christian. In the next game, we're going to have a pretty cool matchup between the South Texas Sableyes, coached by Invivid Color, and the New Orleans Pelippers, coached by John, aka Pokemon. Both of these teams are looking to potentially be in playoffs. John, I think, is 100% locked up. Vivid is probably like 80% locked up. There's probably some weird situation where he could lose and some of the teams behind him could win. The tiebreaker for getting into playoffs is actually not differential, it's head-to-head. So even though Vivid has one of the best differentials in the league, there's a chance that based on head-to-head, he could potentially drop out of playoffs. So like for that reason, I think that Vivid's going to give it an extra special effort, whereas I think John is probably going to be cruising a little bit more. But the sort of meta aspect of the matchup aside, I do like a lot of the options for Vivid here. I think that Halucha is looking really good. The best switch-ins to that are going to be Salamence with Intimidate or potentially Mudsdale. But the problem with Mudsdale is that if you're going up against a sub Halucha, you can't really do that much to it because you can't Toxic it, and obviously you're going to be immune to the ground-type attacks that the Mudsdale could otherwise throw off. So I think that that's a pretty nice option there. Just run stabs plus sub and SD. Setup Mew bulky variant also looks nice as usual. Maybe you run like a SD or bulk up variant with like Drain Punch and Leech Life. It's a set that I very much associate with Jolt from the Token Minorities. I think it's just an awesome option for just being bulky and annoying and kind of getting some recovery to make up for the fact that you don't have Roost. So like Drain Punch would be nice to hit like Magneton, Diggersby, things like that. Leech Life does a little bit more damage to like Alakazam and gets you that recovery back. And then you kind of have like the Zen Headbutt option to hit everything else on the team. So we'll see if he chooses to bring something like that. Mew has so many options every single week, of course, so he could bring something totally different and it would be just as effective. For John, I think the number one option for him is going to be Scarf Salamence. Basically, if he can use that and somehow either weaken or totally get rid of Mega Aggron earlier in the match, the Scarf Mence just looks so scary with Scarf Outrage. The only counter to that is potentially going to be Ice Shard Sneasel. And then kind of along the same lines, if Aggron does get weakened, and then I think Mega Diancie has an option to really go to town. Especially if it's Rock Polish. If it's not Rock Polish, then you could potentially be revenge killed by Noivern with the Steel coverage, whether you go HP Steel or you go for the Steel Wing to hit it on the physical side. Well, that remains to be seen. It would just be nice for the Noivern to have that option because like Diancie could potentially run Calm Mind to help mitigate like the HP Steel. That's like the only thing that maybe you want the Steel Wing for instead. But yeah, there's just like very few ways to deal with Diancie. Without that Aggron. You just basically need like a max HP Bulu or a max HP Mew to try and take the combination of stab moves from the Diancie. Otherwise, Diancie probably one-shots everything on the team. So that's pretty nuts. I am going to be going in favor of Vivid, although I understand people who want to go in favor of John in this game. I think he has some top-tier threats. But like I mentioned, I think that Vivid's going to be giving it his all to try and lock up his playoff position here. It's looking pretty split between the analysts and fans. It's looking like 5 votes for Vivid and 6 for John. Ben, you are a believer in John this week. I know that you're in his front office, and you often have the inside information on matches like this. So do you have anything to add, or do you don't want to spill the secrets?
Well, I do actually think that Vivid is locked in the playoffs. I can only guess this purely because he did message John and they were considering a meme battle, and they decided that they were going to do between like a meme fight and a serious fight. So they're going to have like 2 or 3 heat sets and then the rest being standard, so they can still have a decent fight going into playoffs. But so that's the only assumption that I'm making, that he's locked in. John is, of course, for sure locked in. And I did give him a few spicy sets this week, and I do feel like they can work. So I would really like to see John be able to pull them off. And in general, I've been pulling for my boy, especially going into playoffs. It's not the biggest deal if you do lose right before playoffs, but at the same time, it's great to be having momentum going into it. So that's why I'm voting for John this week. Next up, we have the Nuzleafs, coached by Automatic, going against the Tennessee Trubbish and Definitely I Am. For this game, I definitely see the fast speedy mons in both Greninja and Mega Beedrill looking very solid here. I think Gren has an absolute phenomenal matchup right here. You can easily be Life Orb Mix to deal with the majority of the Pokemon. You can also be Poison Z with Gunk Shot to for sure bop the Clefable and not worry about missing your Gunk Shot, which I always am afraid of. But Greninja definitely is just looking very solid overall. Spamming Dark Pulse and its Water Stab. It gets the outspeed on all of Nuzleaf's frail, speedy offensive Pokemon, such as the Salazzle and the Latios. AV Raikou, however, is probably going to be the best option in order to deal with Gren, or just a slightly bulky Raikou in general. Otherwise, if you are just switching in a pretty normal Raikou, it's going to be worn down over time, especially if it does have to risk like Dark Pulse flinches. You always got to be aware of that. Mega Beedrill, I also think is a great matchup. Amazing U-turn momentum like normal. You do get good coverage to hit everything like that. Also, definitely see like a potential force in Scarf Latios. That might be pretty good. You could bring Balloon on Salazzle in order to deal with that. That could be something you could look into. But you can't hard switch, of course, because of the risk of just going for a U-turn and popping it out. So you have to bring Salazzle fresh in versus the B. That way, it's a little bit more difficult, even though you could just U-turn out versus it. But in general, it's a good pivot to get Gren in, or Gren can have U-turn, and you're just pivoting both of those out. You're weakening the team to where they can just click moves later on and completely clean up. So that's what I would like to see from Deathly. Whether or not we do see it, we have to be a little bit aware of that. He hasn't used these Pokemon to their full potential in the season, I believe. But I would like to see Gren do something, because Gren is one of my favorite Pokemon in Draft League format. Without Beedrill to Revenge, I feel like a Calm Mind Raikou has strong potential to seal the game, in all honesty. Of course, having the Electric Stab and just main moves like that, dealing with Celesteal and just overall. And then you can easily run something like Aura Sphere just for coverage, or you can run Hidden Power Ice in order to hit that Rotom and Gligar a little bit more harder in general. But Beedrill, of course, can have that Drill Run in order to hit the Raikou, or just using its adaptability in general to hit it on the physical side will be important. We could also see a potential like Scarf Tyrantrum or something in order to help out with that. But if not, I do feel like Raikou can almost just take this game. I also see a Spexian Mega doing an amazing job just wall breaking versus the Trubbish. Mega is not always respected by some teams, so I feel like it can definitely put in plenty of work. And you might just see it just at 2-hit KO any Pokemon that wants to try and switch in. So for this matchup, I had to go for the Nuzleafs this week. Nothing to Deathly, but he hasn't been doing the best this season, and even though Automatic hasn't been doing the best either after taking over this team, I still feel like he's a little bit more confident with his team in general and can perform a little bit better. And all the analysts think the same. We have a full sweep for the Nuzleafs this week, as well as the fans at home voting in favor of Automatic. CJ, you actually locked in for the Nuzleafs this week. Is there anything like to add on to this game?
Yeah, I think there's some strong matchup parts for Tyler for sure. Like the Beedrill really just goes in, like just packing Drill Run for like Camerupt and Cobalion that might otherwise deal with the stabs is pretty nice. But it just seems like Tyler is like his mind is not on WBE, while Automatic is still pretty eager to do the best that he can in these games. So I think that he's gonna really put in a good effort, whereas Tyler, I'm not sure. There's some good win cons for Automatic, like you call that, maybe like the Calm Mind Raikou or something like that, really going in. So, yeah, I like Auto. The next game is going to be between the New York Marauders, coached by Mr. Talent, and the opponent, of course, is the Pittsburgh Peaches, and their coach is Numb Nexus. So, in this game, I think that Medicham looks pretty beastly here, although there are some sleeper threats for checking that Mon. For example, using Mega Audino with like Wish Protect in order to like Wish Stall, but also then potentially dodge a high jump kick. Bulky Gyarados with Intimidate and that flying typing to resist the fighting stabs could be also useful. And then the Gourgeist just in general being able to have that ghost typing and switching in a high jump kick for free. Any situation where you take that 50% from high jump kick is pretty bad. But I'm just looking at the team in general, and I'm not sure that he really needs the power from high jump kick. So maybe it's a good week to run Zen Headbutt plus Drain Punch, as there's 2 stab moves, and Headbutt for like maybe the maximum power versus like Gourgeist and Buzzwole and things like that. But then Drain Punch should be able to do a ton of damage to like Empoleon, Nihilego if you need, Stunfisk still. Then you run Bullet Punch for Nihilego, and then maybe T-Punch in the last slot to hit that Gyarados 4 times super effectively. I think that would be a really nice moveset, and it kind of deals with some of those cheekier options. He's got a bunch of, he being Nexus, has a bunch of really good checks to some of Drew's biggest threats, like Latias and Nihilego. He can run both Skuntank and Doublade with like specially defensive sets and Pursuit. and try and trap those two Pokemon. Because neither of them really are going to want to appreciate those high-powered pursuits coming off of either of those two Pokemon. So I'm definitely expecting like bulky Spadef variants of those two Mons. So I think that the responses on Nexus' side for the major threats for Drew are pretty good. Like Buzzwole isn't that major of a threat this game. Zapdos and Doublade both do a pretty good job of dealing with it. I mentioned the Nihilego and Lottie kind of being dealt with pretty well. The one thing that can be spooky, I think, is the Gyarados there. Because water-type moves are not really appreciated by Nexus. And the one main water-type resist, being Tangrowth, is going to be really hit hard by Flyinium Z coming off of that bounce. Might be able to take it out in one hit with the Z move. Goodra is there as another water resist, but it's not as bulky on the Fizdef side. And Gyarados can easily pack like Ice Fang coverage, or he could run just, if he's wasted his Z Crystal on the Tangrowth, he could still just click regular bounce versus the Goodra and do quite a chunk of damage. So I'm not sure what his counterplay to that might be. Otherwise, maybe he brings like Scarf Zapdos to try and revenge kill a +1 Gyarados. Maybe he goes with that. But at the end of the day, I am still going to be picking, I'm definitely going to be picking Nexus because I think, again, he kind of has checks for most of the team. Drew, he is right there on the edge of playoffs, but so is Nexus. So they're both going to be trying to put it into this game. It looks like I might be in the minority here. There's only 4 analysts that are picking Nexus here, while 7 of our analysts and, of course, our fans as well are going to be going in favor of Drew. Looks like you're definitely in Drew's corner this week, again, supporting your boy.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Drew, and I would really like to see him move into playoffs, but really once it just comes down to is that I've mentioned it before, I'm not a big fan of the Pittsburgh Peaches roster. I'm just a little too slow and bulky on my taste, not a fan of that playstyle, so I do feel like Drew's side fits a little bit more in my bill. I didn't really look too much into the matchup in all honesty. I just went off a little bit of records and then just based off of the teams and the fact that I feel like Drew could definitely fight a little bit more in playoffs. Next up, we have the Free State Torcats, coached by Duncan Can't Die, going against the Newcastle Nido-Kings and Patters. Now, for this game, I really just see Tapu Koko and Terrakion potentially just winning the entire thing for Patters. They just have amazing matchups in general. Calm Mind Koko is just doing very solid. Really, the only thing that can really stop it is like a Scarf Zydog. I feel like that's just the best option in order to deal with it. And if you do run Scarf, you are able to put like Toxic on Zydog in order to Toxic the Hippo, which can easily switch in and take, of course, the 1,000 arrows that you're trying to spam versus the team. So being able to grab a Toxic on the Hippo, if that's the switch in at least, which would be very beneficial. Terrakion, once again, goes in. I feel like a Swords Dance Fight C would just be really, really solid in general. You do have to, of course, be aware of the Zydog being revenged. If it is a Scarf, you will be able to take a hit pretty well, I have to say. But if it's like a band, you're not allowed to basically do anything until that thing's out of the way, unless you are like a Scarf Terrakion yourself or something of the sort. Defensive Hitmontop would probably be the most ideal check. I wouldn't really be too surprised if we see defensive Intimidate Hitmontop this week. Between the Terrakion, the Mega Gyarados, and the Snorlax, I feel like it is definitely likely that we see it. Apart from that, Terrakion would like a slightly weakened Jirachi, and other than that, I feel like it can put in plenty of work with that Koko. Snorlax with Thick Fat, really just hard walls Blacephalon in general. It's like Tyranitar, Snorlax, and Meltank are all the solid checks to Blacephalon. So not really going to be doing too much there with Blacephalon this week, and Snorlax can basically just sit there. You can also take a few more special hits from the remainder of the team, like if it's a special Calming Jirachi, or if it's a Circuitry that's trying to abuse the terrain. Because I do feel like that Circuitry does have a pretty solid matchup, especially if you're able to catch that Hippowdon off guard with like an Energy Ball. You could run Grass Z if you really wanted to. I kind of push towards Z moves sometimes because they are a little bit busted with just with the damage output, and if they don't read it properly, then their only check is gone and you're just free for the rest of the game. So that's why I support that. But other than that, of course, you can run like HP Ice to hit the Alolan Exeggutor as well, and Circuitry really is just going to be putting in a lot of work if you give it that free terrain. But when it came down to it, I definitely had to go for the Newcastle Nido-Kings and Patters this week. Majority of the analysts seem to agree with me. It's pretty split. I think it's 5-6 or 6-5 in favor of Patters this week. By the looks of it, we actually have its sock locking in the Free State Torcats, and the fans at home decided to vote in favor of the Newcastle Nido-Kings and Patters as well. CJ, you want to tell me why you went for Patters?
It's mostly just because, like, for you, like, Drew's your boy. I feel like Patters is my boy. Like, I always like to watch Patters' games just because he has an enthusiasm for Pokemon that's not shared by as like so many people in the community. Like not to his level. Like, lots of people are obviously enthusiastic, but I always appreciate the extra effort that Patters puts in. I think that I'm just a believer in Tapu Koko and Terrakion, like you called out. Hippo is a pretty good check to a lot of the team. I think that Patters is going to pull it off. The next game is going to be between the Rochester Rhydons and Iron Boffin versus the LA Spice, coached by K. Cray. So this is not a super easy matchup for Iron Boffin, I would say. I think it maybe leans a little bit more in favor of K. Cray. I think that Boff's best win con might be Agility Blaziken, and then you have some sort of coverage move for Starmie. I'm pretty sure that Blaziken gets Thunder Punch as a way to hit that probably as hard as it can. That sort of Blaziken set would definitely appreciate that his guy is being broken on Mimikyu in order to sweep. So maybe you use a different setup threat to get that Mimikyu's disguise broken, such as Altaria, which is not too bad in this matchup. Like, you run Agility plus like Hyper Voice plus Flamethrower. Maybe then you have to put like Earthquake on for Ninetales or something like that, because that set does technically get walled by Ninetales. So we'll have to see. I think a Quick Feet Jolteon will be really fun in this game. Whenever you have a Jolteon going up against a P2, which potentially has the option of Trace to trace the Volt Absorb, I think it's always good to switch it up on Jolteon and go with Quick Feet. If you want to throw a Flame Orb on it, that's actually kind of a nice option because it outpaces a modest Lilligant in the sun. Not that like Signal Beam from Jolteon is going to do too much damage in return to a Lilligant, but sometimes it's just nice to know that if you can chip that thing down, you have a guaranteed way to revenge it there. On the Jolteon, if you go with Volt Switch, T-Bolt, and Signal Beam in the first 3 slots, then the last question is, do you go for HP Ice to hit the Guard Chomp, or do you go for HP Ground to hit the Magnezone? We'll have to see what Boff chooses to do there. I think K-Cray's best bet for winning is probably something simple like Scarf Garchomp, just because the ground resists are not that great coming out of Boff. It's basically just Staraptor and the Shaman. And Staraptor, like, it's not a defensive pivot to begin with, and it's easily worn down with like Rocks and Recoil and stuff. Then Shaman, like, yes, it's a pretty decent response to Chomp, but Shaman doesn't have an amazing matchup here. The fact that you're going up against a Sun team with like Mega Houndoom that could do really critical damage to it, Ninetales to do a lot of damage, things like that. Plus Crobat being a really, really safe switch into Shaman. You have Double Steel as being good responses to Seed Flare spam, things like that. Shaman just doesn't have the most amazing matchup. Like, it's probably gonna come just for like the Starmie and the Garchomp by themselves, but I think otherwise, like, Shaman is not wanting to come in a lot in this game. So yeah, I think it's slightly in favor of K in terms of the matchup, but I still like Boffin in this game. He is the person that I'm going to be picking to win in this game. But we've got another pretty even vote amongst the analysts and fans. It looks like we've got 5 in favor of K and then 6 in favor of Iron Boffin. Looks like you are going in favor of one of your favorite Fortnite buddies being Iron Boffin here.
Yes, actually, just in call with Boffin right before this while they were playing Fortnite, and he thought he was going to be taking an L this week, but was still looking forward to the last battle of the season. So I was telling him he had to get a win to end it off. I would like to see something like Weavile doing pretty well in this matchup. You can easily run like Focus Blast, Fight Z, or just still run Low Kick just to make sure you can still have decent fighting coverage after as well. But you're able to bop something like Mega Houndoom, which easily walls Weavile's stabs when you normally look at it. You can blow back Magnezone if it's not a Scarf, even though actually Scarf Magnezone might not outspeed either way. And then you have Porygon 2, which also would be really helpful to break apart in general. So that's something I'd like to see. And apart from that, yeah, I just really want to see Boff get a win in his last week. Nothing against Kay. She's been doing pretty well with her Sun team this season. I do like it. And Mega Houndoom's always terrifying in Sun. But I just got to go for my boy this week. Hopefully he can get a win to finish off the season. And for the next match, we have the Maryland Torterrapins, coached by Under the Radar, going against the Durham Druddigons and 6-foot Hacks. Now, this is a game I would really love to see taken seriously, but unfortunately, I don't believe that's going to happen this week. I love Kelly and Leo, and I know that they're going to be doing a meme battle this game. They already told me they would be, and when it comes down to it, Kelly typically has more luck in those, so I'm already going to say I picked Kelly for this week. But just in case they were to have a serious battle, I would just talk about the matchup a little bit. I really do see like a banded Zygarde in general doing heavy damage versus the Durham Druddigons. They really don't appreciate just 1,000 arrow spam. And also you could run a very bulky Coil Zygarde. I feel like that also has a very solid matchup, but you have to be respectful to like a pretty offensive Ice Beam from Manaphy, or like a Ice Beam from a Sheer Force Tauros as well, etc. Stuff like that. The simple special ice coverage you have to be aware of. Zygarde, unfortunately, or would still be having an amazing matchup either way. As for Leo, Mega Lopunny does a tremendous amount of damage when Smesprit is stealth with. Just getting a little bit of chip off of it, and then getting Lopunny in for the late run and get like maybe Power Punch return, or Power Up Punch return, sorry. And being able to deal with that would be likely. Then I put in plenty of work because you do have the Scrappy to hit the Mega Sableye super effectively. You're going to blow back Stack Attack either way. Your Fairy type and Wigglytuff is neutral to Fighting type Stab, etc. etc. Flame Orb Milotic doesn't even do that well versus Mega Lopunny because it just hits that hard. So you have to be aware of that. A Tail Glow Manaphy also has a pretty solid matchup, I'd have to say, because it gets plenty of coverage for everything, and the Milotic can't really deal with both a Mega Lopunny and a Manaphy in front of its face. It's going to be really hard spreading those EVs and balancing between defensive and special defensive. So Energy Ball coverage would be very helpful for that, and I honestly just don't see them having too much in general. To deal with that, you could definitely be Z-Ran Dance in order to get the outspeed on Superior and the Alolan Raichu, which definitely want a revenge versus the Manaphy, which would be pretty key. But yeah, I'm definitely expecting a meme battle going into this last week, mainly because they have a chance of facing in playoffs at one point, so they don't want to show each other like their best sets or be too serious versus one another because they are that competitive. So I'm definitely expecting the meme battle, and I'm just going to go in favor of Kelly and the Maryland Torterrapins this week, because typically he's a pretty lucky guy when it comes to meme battles, and his sets are pretty fire. So even if he doesn't win, he wins in my heart just because of the stuff he brings. And as for the rest of the analysts, it was a majority in Kelly's favor, actually, with only 4 analysts going in favor of the Durham Druddigons and Leo, and the rest going in favor of Kelly, while the fans at home decided to vote in favor of the Maryland Torterrapins as well. CJ, is there anything you'd like to add to this match?
No, not really. Like you said, like I think it's totally fair for these guys to not want to show their hands, considering the playoffs is just around the corner. The only thing that's interesting is that, if I'm not mistaken, they both caught losses last week. And so it always stinks when you're going into playoffs on a losing streak. So that might be the only thing that sort of changes the mentality there. But yeah, there's definitely some analysis that can happen here, but it's a little bit hollow when you know how the match is probably going to occur. So I'm picking Kelly kind of for the same reasons that you did. But it could go either way. I'm not going to be surprised if I end up getting this one wrong. The next game, in my final game for this week, and for the final game of the regular season for me, is going to be between the Minnesota Vicavolts and A-Drive and the Bronze Bearticks versus Joey Pokey-Aim MD. This is a really awesome match coming up here. These guys have a great history going back through many different leagues, all the way back to UCL Season 1. We're going to hopefully get some intense matches, or get an intense match like this, like some of their matches from their past. I think there's a lot of really interesting stuff occurring in this matchup. For example, Dan has really relied upon his core of Florges plus Skarmory plus Gastrodon this season. Those are the types of Pokemon that just get eaten alive by Gothitelle. Like, it's just, they're just complete bait for Gothitelle unless they're packing Shed Shell. And so, like, if you have like a Scarf set of Gothitelle, being able to trap those and go for like T-Bolt on Skarmory or Energy Ball on Gastrodon is really nice. Florges is a little bit more it's a little bit better of a check to Gothitelle, just because it's so specially defensive. Has such a big special defense stat. But maybe if you're like a Specs Gothitelle with Psyshock or something like that, you can do enough damage to Florges with time that you can eventually trap it. It's going to be really nice for, as well, for like trapping Venusaur, even like Kyurem Black, if it's like not a Scarf variant. You can use Gothitelle to try and trap the Kyurem Black. Like, what if the Kyurem is like a Z move set or something like that? You can hit it with a Focus Blast and potentially trap that thing, so that's pretty annoying. Speaking of Kyurem Black, I do think that it's really solid this game. It's going to be really good through breaking through Joey's wall core of Toxapex, Bronzong, and Piloswine. just because the ability of having the Terravolt to act like a mold breaker, getting rid of the Levitate on that Bronzong, stuff like that would be really nice. You can just spam Earth Power. You might even want to run Z Earth Power to do maximum damage to like Bronzong and Toxapex, so we'll have to see if he chooses to do that. It makes it so that the Piloswine, which normally is an Ice Resist with its ability Thick Fat, is no longer an Ice Resist, so it makes the Ice Beam spam just a little bit better. Yeah, it's just really nice for breaking through those 3 Mons in particular. So it's funny, they both have a Mon on their sides that can break through the wall core of the others. So I think as a result, it's going to end up being pretty offensive. Just like kind of Skarmory is the one thing that really sticks out as being the most annoying wall of like all 6 of those like defensive Pokemon. Just because Skarm in general is hard for Joey to break through. You're relying on Volcarona's stab to wear it down, but Volcarona never wants to switch in on Skarm due to the fear of Brave Bird, of course. So we'll have to see like if Joey comes up with some other creative way to deal with Skarm other than trapping it with Gothitelle. Joey's Gallade looks pretty spooky this game. If you run like an SD set, it could be really nice. I actually like a bulky SD, like max HP, max speed. You want the max speeds that we can speed tie with the Lycanroc if you need to. But going bulky makes it so that you can take a T-Bolt from the Manectric if you need to. And then, like, even without attack investment, like a +2 Drain Punch to a Manectric should be able to knock it out after rocks, depending upon the sort of bulk investment that Dan has. He could definitely go with a modest nature in this game instead of timid, which means that he's going to be having to put a few extra EVs into speed. If he wanted to go timid with Manectric, he would have to only run very minimal speed investment, and then he could put a lot into HP. So that might be worth it, even if you lose the power there. So we'd have to see. But yeah, that Gallade looks pretty nice. The main things stopping that are, of course, is like some variants of Skarmory, and then Talonflame is kind of the really annoying option. Because Talonflame can throw off a Brave Bird, whether it's Gale Wings boosted or not, like to give it the priority. Like it should still be able to take out most variants of Gallade. But if I were Joey, I'd probably try and bring a couple of lure options for that Talonflame, most notably being the Breloom. So if you bring like Spore on Breloom as the Talonflame comes in, being able to put that thing to sleep, that's really nice. It takes a lot of pressure off of Gallade. To try and sweep before that Talonflame gets out. Like you could just hit it with Zen Headbutt or something like that before that happens. Alternatively, like if you didn't want to run Spore, you could run like Rock Tomb to hit that thing, which is really nice. One option that could be kind of cool is to go with Toxic Orb plus Facade. So the reason I think that would be kind of nice is because then you can get a really, really powerful option off on that Talonflame, which otherwise resists the stabs from Breloom. And then you don't risk getting the burn from the flame body that Talonflame could potentially run. And then Facade's just nice for breaking through stuff like Venusaur, which would otherwise stop Breloom as well. So, yeah, a couple of good options on both sides. In terms of who is a favorite in this matchup, I am going to be going in favor of Joey. Much like Wolfie in the previous week, like Joey is just another one of Dan's, I don't want to say kryptonites. Like Dan has gotten the better of Joey a couple of times, but he's definitely one of the hardest opponents that Dan has to go up in the particular season. We've got 3 guys on our squad going in favor of Dan here. We've got Chris Cobain, Dr. Slacking, and the Uzi Gunner. Everyone else, including the fans, is going to be going in favor of Joey. So I'm sorry if that was a detailed breakdown or a long breakdown, but this is a match that's worth analyzing. So do you have anything to add on to that, Ben, over there?
You definitely said plenty, CJ. I'm not going to knock you on that, but I had to go in favor of Joey this week for sure. Can't go against the undefeated. That's how I just basically got to say it. I would like to see a perfect season from Joey, in all honesty. Going into playoffs, that'd be pretty cool. But in general, these teams, once again, are likely to face one another, just like the Torterrapins and the Druddigons. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see everything, especially from Joey. This is actually really beneficial to Joey compared to Dan, because Joey has the biggest brain in the Pokemon community, just about. So he's definitely able to think of plenty of sets that he's able to bring and just keep the major threats in the back. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see the Gothitelle, because it can abuse the Vikavolt pretty well, like you mentioned. Apart from like Zoroark would actually be pretty interesting, because of course you're not sure the Dark type yet until you see the illusion or you understand what it goes for. But the Gothitelle and just trapping, I feel like he wants to keep that in the back for playoffs. That's something he can definitely abuse. Just many sets that Joey could use. I feel like he's going to keep it a little bit on the back burner for playoffs and just kind of respect Dan and just give him a decent battle, but more so just, of course, I feel like Joey would 1,000,000% rather go or lose his last game instead of going perfect if that means he has a better run in playoffs. So keeping that in mind, I feel like Joey just has control of it. And for the last game for Week 13, we have the Milwaukee Bucks, coached by Magnitude, going up against the Milwaukee Bewares and Wolfie Glick. We have the Battle of Milwaukee this week. It's what everyone has been asking for, and here it is. And if you weren't asking for it, you're getting it either way. So for this match, we also have a battle of the weather. It comes down between sand and rain. I don't know what's more common in Milwaukee. I'm going to assume rain over sandstorms occur more often in Milwaukee. But apart from that, I really feel like the sand is going to benefit a little bit better because Excadrill does have a better matchup compared to Mega Swampert. Tornadus, however, on Wolfie's side would receive 100% accurate hurricanes in the rain, which would be very beneficial because typically you're always afraid of going for that hurricane because of its 70% accuracy, but giving that 100% boost would be very, very nice. On the other hand, Thundurus is a very threatening Pokemon, especially with Fight Z, which would be a for sure strong fighting type move in order to hit Excadrill, Gigalith, or the potential like Farizion, something of the sort, the Alolan Golem, etc. Just hitting it pretty well compared to its typical electric stabs. Apart from that, Thunderbolt spam is very free. You can definitely run agility, not only to outspeed Excadrill in the sand, but potentially just do cleanup in the late game. Because Gengar is going to be taking a bunch. Torn, of course, is weak to electric stab. It's going to be really helpful for Pokemon such as the Mandibuzz that might want to stay in and like wall some of your Pokemon like Scizor. So you can really abuse Thundurus this week, I feel like, especially if you are able to catch that Gigalith off guard. Wolfie does an amazing job playing his Gigalith, though, making sure he has it around for his Stealth Rocks typically, and the amazing sand that he gives Excadrill, and he does very well with both of those two combined, so you have to be aware of that. Apart from that, a defensive Weezing that Wolfie does love using is looking pretty solid in this matchup. Of course, you get fire coverage in order to wall the Scizor, which is pretty nice. Scizzor's not doing much to Weezing in the first place, and then you're able to threaten it out with a Flamethrower or Fire Blast, which is pretty helpful. T-Spikes are also looking very solid because I really don't think Coolfish has the best matchup in the world. Apart from that, you would really just bring Defog on Scizor, and if you don't do either of those two things, those T-Spikes are staying up the entire game, I feel like. I'm not really expecting a Spin Armaldo or anything like that, so I could definitely see T-Spikes getting up and staying for the game if that Quillfish doesn't come, because I feel like Scizor definitely wants to be more of an offensive check this game, unless it's defensive to help with like the likes of Gengar and Excadrill, so... But I had to go in favor of Wolfie Glick and the Milwaukee Bewares this week. It's just hard to go up against him 1,000,000%, especially since he's doing significantly better than Steve. Steve still had a very solid season in general, and we love the sets that he brings. But Wolfie is the reigning champion and everything, so it's very hard to go against him. Every analyst is actually going for Wolfie this week as well, and the fans voted for Wolfie, and that's actually the fan lock-in for this week, while I am myself also deciding to lock in for Wolfie. CJ, is there any other thing you would like to add?
Not really. I would hope that Wolfie finds a way to get Blastoise even further up the kill leaderboards. It's one of like the top 5 Mons in terms of netting kills this season. Blastoise is a Pokemon that I enjoy quite a lot. It's like one of the first Megas I ever used in Draft League, so I think it's pretty cool. So if he finds a way to get that to the top, I think that'd be awesome. That's what I'm like most looking forward to in this game, is seeing if he can find a way to make that work out. Otherwise, I'm definitely expecting Wolfie to take the W here.
Alright everyone, that's going to be doing it for the games of Week 13 right before playoffs. It's going to be an amazing week for sure. I'm looking forward to these battles, see which teams clutch playoffs and which teams are looking the most hot going into them. So look forward to that. And of course, Pick'ems will be continuing going into playoffs, do not worry. And luckily, we will be having less battles to talk about, which CJ and I are pretty happy about. And we'll be going a little bit more into detail in some of these games so we can make sure to provide you guys with the best content, because playoffs is important to everyone. But I'm going to send it over to CJ for the plugs this week.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. Yeah, you guys probably know the drill by now, but of course, thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you drop a like and you leave a sub to the WBE channel. There is going to be plenty of content coming your way through the playoff portion of the season, as Ben alluded to. So make sure that you check that out. Make sure you go into the link down below in the description and look for all of the coaches that you can subscribe to. That way, once the games come out this weekend, you get them delivered straight to your inbox. That'd be really great. Make sure you check out the t-shirts at the Ownage store. Make sure you check out the Pixelmon servers. info to that down below. Big thanks to Poke Ninja and Pixelmon for sponsoring this season. And of course, as always, the big thanks to you guys for all of your support throughout the WBE season. This has been one of the best draft league seasons that has ever happened. So it's just been such a pleasure doing this for you guys, doing this with my buddy Ben. And we're excited to see how this season concludes. So that's going to do it for me. Ben, any final words? I think I know the magic 2 words or magic 1 word.
Deuces.
Deuces. Peace.